The rise of cutting edge disruptive technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine language, big data, robotic process automation, and smart bots are redefining the future of procurement. Even these were piloted in public sectors. They are now gradually adopted in public procurement also. To discuss this emerging area of interest to everyone, sorry, we have two industry leaders sharing their views in the current session on technological disruptors in procurement. Mr. Chand Hill, Mr. Chad Hill, Xeeva CRO, and Mr. Anurag Padmanabhan, Vice President Xeeva, will be our session presenters. Let me give a brief introduction about them. As a Xeeva CRO, Mr. Hill leads Xeeva business development and customer success team across India, America, and North America. He has over 15 years of experience in business development, customer success, team development, and organizational design. Mr. Hill has passionately focused his development over the past 8 years on specializing in procurement and supply chain technology and process like budget to pay, e-commerce, sourcing, data enrichment, control tower, and spend analysis. He studied at Arizona State University for his undergraduate work and Northeastern University for his graduate MBA program, including study abroad program at Moscow State University. Let me now introduce you to the next presenter from Siva, Mr. Anurag Padmanabhan. He's a vice president. As an energized executive with 25 plus years of selling and managing complex solutions across FMCG, financial services, automotive, and logistic industries, having worked across organizations like Thomson, Samsung Electronics, and Citigroup, he has in-depth knowledge about channel management, SaaS sale vendor monitoring, product development innovation, product advertising, retail banking, marketing, compliance, and control. The list is long. Currently, he leads the sale and business development for India, Southern East, and Middle East. Let me please welcome our presenter, Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill, you can start your presentation, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the time. Always good to hear the passion that comes through from Mr. Rattan from the ISM group. We're absolutely facing a paradigm shift within the procurement technology space. I think in terms of technology, it's almost a quantum leap forward in cases where most people and what they're facing. And that's what Anurag and I are going to focus our conversation on today, is really that quantum leap forward in technology and what we're facing and the challenges to be able to get there. We've broken it down into several different phases that we'll walk you through over the next 30 minutes. Before we get there, so full disclosure, if you hear some background, I'm actually on my 10-year honeymoon, our 10-year wedding anniversary with my wife. So I'm hiding in the basement of a hotel down here, but couldn't pass up the opportunity to speak to this group. So thank you very much for being flexible, and hopefully we don't have any background noise. As I was introduced, my name is Chad Hill. I lead Xeeva. Xeeva is an intelligent spend management platform where we focus on a data-first transformation to help improve the procurement practice. Everything from spend analytics, sourcing, supplier value management, marketplace, procure to pay. We manage it all. Anurag, if you wouldn't mind clicking on to the next step, what I would like to do is kind of break down, and what we've really done at Xeeva is to be able to achieve this type of quantum leap in digital transformation. We've approached it in 5 different phases with our customers, ultimately trying to hit the peak of the mountain, which for us is better data, which leads to better insights within your companies and opportunities, and then allows us together to achieve better outcomes. Phase one, of course, as we've all know, is data is king. So transforming your data is one of the most difficult parts in your transformation journey, and being able to take a quantum leap forward and starting to use some of the advanced technologies we'll all hear about, and what AI and machine learning, what all these bots are going to be able to do for us, how much money they're going to be able to save, and labor staffing they're going to be able to achieve for us. But if we don't go through the proper data transformation, we're not going to be able to achieve the final phases of a true transformation in the procurement department. Phase two, the way we see it, automating your wave plan. Wave planning is your category planning for your category managers. Once we've gone through a data transformation, got our information to the state that we want it to, can your AI work with your category managers to start to plan out their 6 and 12-month journey? What type of strategic sourcing are they going to take? Is it purchase price variance that they're interested in, supplier consolidation, material handlings that are slightly different? How are they looking at that, and how can AI start to play into that to help them automate that processes? Phase three, supplier discovery. Once we've identified, or AI has helped us identify areas for transformation, areas for savings, how do we find the appropriate suppliers? How do we go about awarding new suppliers through auctions, through strategic sourcing, through a quick quote or spot buy? All of it has to be able to understand your data, your category managers, and how they're working throughout this process to better advise your end users on the what if scenarios. What if I award 20% to this supplier and 80% to that supplier? What if I do a sole source? What if I award 100% to this? It's allowing the AI to give you those options to your end users to be able to make better, more intelligent decisions. Once we've made those decisions in the upstream, and we've made strategic buying channels, we've set in appropriate buying policies, how do we enforce those into the downstream of the business, the day-to-day operators, those within our factories and field locations? We want to be able to drive compliance in the purchasing channel and what payments they make, to make sure that we're achieving the negotiated savings rates, the negotiated on-time delivery goods of our processes that we've gone through and put into our scope of work and our contracts. But if we're not connecting excuse me, phase four digitally to phase one, two, and three, there's always a disconnect between the upstream strategic part of the business and the downstream operational part of the business. We find an absolute ton of value when you can digitize that process and connect that data on one code base to allow you to be able to enforce and drive those compliance. And then phase five. After internally we've transformed our processes, we've given our end users a quantum leap forward in their technology capabilities. We've removed email, Word, Excel, and some of those capabilities that we've used for the past 20, 30 years. We've brought in some advanced AI. We've trained the system on how our buyers like to interact with the data. We're then able to go to phase five, which is monitoring the ongoing value from our suppliers. So supplier value management, going beyond the quality of goods, on-time delivery scores, and really looking at holistically, how can I drive the most value out of this partnership with my suppliers? I'll stop there. Anurag, I'll let you take over, and Anurag will walk you through these 5 phases in a little bit more detail, and then culminate with a few case studies on where we've actually seen some real-world impact on these phases. Anurag?
Thank you, Chad. So, as one of the key components about the first phase of the journey is, data transformation. So, data transformation itself is a very big word. One of the famous interests in India and Asia is mention this word: data is oil. So, how we see our data and how we transform our data is extremely important. And the first step, which Chad was trying to say, is how the data side of the entire ecosystem can be first looked at, transformed into a more meaningful part so that we can take it to the next steps. Now, for doing that, how technology has kind of come up over the years is how machine learning and algorithms have been developed specifically to address this pain issue, how the data can be auto classified without very less of manual intervention, which ultimately is also very extremely important from a time to value. Because if I'm dealing with huge sets of data, and for me to realize immediate value, that time to execute that whole data transformation is extremely important. And that's where what we feel is data transformation is the first step for going into all those remaining 5 steps within the journey. The next important thing is generally after we have that data transformed, we would like to have automatic wave plans. Most of the sourcing team, folks on the call or the category managers would like the next gen engine to suggest to them that what is the best way forward for me across different categories. So let's say, for example, I am doing something on MRO items. I am doing something on CapEx. What are the XYZ opportunities which I as a category manager can work and system can suggest to me based on how my cleansed data is looking like. So when you talk about automatic wave reporting is how the data is transformed and then the AI and ML is able to bucketize into different buckets and sourcing basket and take it to a level of execution. The next thing is after you have the automatic wave plans kind of done, the most important thing around is the supplier discovery. Now, within supplier discovery is something called as bid optimization. As a category manager or a sourcing person, I would like to specifically talk about how the system is able to recommend to me which is the best fit supplier in these categories. Post that would ideally, you heard Mr. Batra said and Chad mentioned around e-bidding events. But the most challenging part, which most of the sourcing people face today, is how do I really decide which is the best supplier to award to? That is the step where technology comes in, where it can help you do a bid optimization, give you various scenarios as to how do you want to not only discover a supplier, but eventually award it. Post, when you ideally would want to have an awarding done, it has to go into a proper compliance process. The compliance process basically talks about having hosted catalogs, but taking one step ahead of that is something called as public catalogs. Now, when we talk about the whole journey, especially from a data point of how the data is getting transformed from one level to other level, the same step can be done as how we can have compliance across different categories by having hosted catalogs, which system is telling that these are the top 10 categories for which you have the catalogs ready to buy. But let's say if I have those suppliers whom I can have access to public catalogs. So for me as a category manager, I have not only my hosted catalogs, but I have access to all those public catalogs, which I can not only do a price discovery, but look at expanding my supplier universe. The next important thing is after we did all the exercises around compliance, having approval flows, how the system is able to recommend to me the right category to source, it has to culminate at the right supplier management. Now, for us, the supplier value management basically speaks in two important components. The first important component is how you're able to not only have a 360 degrees view of your supplier's different parameters, but take into effect the different new things which are coming in. So, for example, if I'd like to see ESG score of my suppliers, I would like to see what's the on-time delivery. I would like to see how is this performance over a timeline. So all that recommendations the system has to give to the category managers and the sourcing team by having a supplier value management system, which is technically the last step. So if I start from step 1, which is data transformation, I do have these automatic wave reportings. I would like to take into a P2P system where I can have my hosted catalogs and also have access to public catalogs so that I'm having a compliance process. But it has to culminate at a supplier value management where for me, I'm not only able to decide on the different parameters of awarding, but I'm also able to see the supplier risk. For me, the risk has to be visible. I need to see what are the different attributes for which I'm able to short select a supplier. And the journey has to be 360 degrees in that nature. Now, the second important point I'd like to talk about is post when we do a supplier value management. I'm sure most of you would have seen these challenges across the timeline in the last 2 years. So, having seen these challenges, which we have seen in the last 2 years, supplier risk, inflation, supply chain disruptions, and fraud, how we were able to take this into effect and look at some of unique case studies which we are able to do for some of our customers, not only across in Asia, but in North America and Europe also. So with that, let me take you to quickly to a couple of case studies which we have specifically as to how we took the journey from data transforming, taking it to a supplier value management, and we're able to kind of fulfill on some of these parameters for giving them a successful result. The first case study which we have is specifically around supplier risk management. Now, in this case, the company was a leading global geotechnical contracting company with close to 3 billion in annual spend. The problem which we were kind of solve is, they were having a very condensed view of suppliers. For them, the risk was one of the biggest issues. Visibility was hardly anything. The solution which we are trying to pitch to them, which until not implemented, was having a full suite, right, from spend to P2P. Now, I will go back to all the 5 stages which we did. These are the 5 stages which we actually implemented for this customer. Taking their data, transforming it, giving in insights, and ultimately taking into a compliance side of it. Doing all this resulted in not only giving this organization a supplier value, but also monitoring the supplier spend across multiple locations. But by doing that, not by having a unified view of your suppliers, they were able to, in one way, not only mitigate the risk, but also look at alternate suppliers in this specific timeline to go into an execution standpoint. So that with a company with close to 3 billion spent and 32 subsidiaries, consolidating all that exercise into one unified view, having a standardized approach globally across this, resulted them in getting the value. The second case study which I have specifically is around inflation. So inflation is one thing which is totally out of your control. As a procurement professional, you really can't predict inflation unless until you would be already aware that there's going to be a price increase. Most of the things we generally know as seasoned professionals. But in this particular case, one of the problems which we are trying to face was with the rising commodity prices and the automatic supply chain issues, the manufacturers were having issues specifically related to how they can look at reduce the prices. Now, in such scenario, what did Xeeva as a company do? The sourcing aspect to it, which is we call as the automatic sourcing wave planning. What we did specifically in that is not only systems suggested to them that this is the right category where there should be a prospecting saving opportunity, but it also suggested that these should be the alternate suppliers whom you should probably look at including them in the bid. So when I talk about automatic wave reporting, this is a very classic example of how the system was able to kind of suggest to the category managers that these are the top 10 opportunities which your team should work on, which technically will result in much yielded or better savings. So what ultimately it happened from that? For the customer, some of the key categories, especially around packaging, was helpful for them to look at a consolidated savings across 2 different countries. All this was possible because they started the journey from data, taking it to automated wave reporting, and ultimately getting that results in those specific categories. So in summary, if you see both the case studies, what we are trying to solve over here, we are trying to solve the biggest issue is data, and how that data can be taken into something which the category managers can be presented around wave planning. These 2 aspects, how the digitization is able to help and how the algorithms in the machine has able to give those right insights which are relevant for those categories so that the buyers or the category managers are able to execute on those opportunities. With that, I quick kind of end my presentation, and we are open to any question and answers on this day. Thank you. Payal?
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Thank you, Anurag. It was a cognate presentation. Now, we really enjoyed listening to you. We'll look, participants, if you have questions, please write it in the chat box so that we can take it up with the presenters. Okay, we have a couple of questions to you. This is from Mr. Nikhil Gurjar. Data availability and data accessibility are two different things. The latter is driven by the policy of the organization. How does one ensure the proper implementation in such cases?
I mean, that to me comes to a stakeholder question of how are we pulling IT into the fold as we go through our digital transformation. IT can't be a third-party stakeholder in your transformation. IT needs to be pulled into the group, which is difficult because IT is always understaffed, overworked, so they're always facing difficulties in being able to allocate the resources to provide the data elements that we need, write the scripts write the scripts to be able to export the elements that lead to a better digital transformation. Where we find it most successful is pulling them into the fold and pulling them into the fold and making sure that they're part of the team that's driving the value, and they understand why the value is happening, what the data is being used for, what the end goal is. I think pointing out to IT managers on what the difference of classifying your data by something like UNSPC versus a customized taxonomy and how that can drive value usually helps with that problem of accessibility. But I can only take it as accessibility is not a lack of security, or not a purpose of security, but more of just pulling IT into the fold where they feel like a stakeholder in that transformation. Most of these projects where I hear about is not a security reason of not wanting your unstructured data to be learned by a third-party AI. It's more of actually getting access to the data. And in that case, you really have to bring that team into the fold. Anurag, I don't know if you have more to add to that.
No, I think you're right, Chad. The data access is obviously a big challenge, especially when you talk about the analytics and taking it to sourcing side of it. But ultimately, as an organization, it is a very strategic exercise, and the stakeholders in this whole exercise is not only procurement, the business, the finance, the CFO, as well as the IT. They are all stakeholders, because ultimately the benefit of this is not only to procurement, it's for the entire organization. So it has to be equally distributed across all the verticals, so that the value has to be realized across. That's kind of what I want to add, Jack. Yeah.
Thank you. Now I'm going to take the second question, which is posted in the chat box. Um, uh, Before we are going for green procurement, how we ensure green data? Green data should be the threshold for green procurement. So kindly respond. What needs and tools, devices devised by World Bank and other responsible organizations to create and generate green data in an ongoing VUCA environment?
Anurag, do you want to address this one, or should I?
Yes, and I'll kind of briefly take this. One of the key things, especially I can't kind of speak on behalf of World Bank, but what we generally, as from a technology standpoint, is uh, when you talk about these two aspects of green procurement and green data, uh, ultimately it has to tie in with the strategic initiative of that organization. Now, is that a priority which probably with the organization has to look into? And especially with the changing dynamics of the world, how these separate structured policy can be guided on to kind of execute it. But it all has to boil down to priority, and the tools, as we talked about, are available in the market from that perspective. But it's the question of how do you want to prioritize it versus your existing operational procurement. That's kind of the way I see it, Chad. You would want to.
Yeah, I mean, green data, I mean, it's the pinnacle to where we want to get to. I think most organizations in their maturity curve are far from monitoring the data from a green standpoint. Unfortunately, it's still a future state where we want to get to. There's higher priorities within the data to uncover some of the basic levels. How is the completeness of my data? Do I need my data enhanced to be able to even understand what is green? I think by digitizing these processes, we're going green naturally, reducing the amount of paper invoices, POs, and email processes that are going throughout that journey, and digitizing those. But if we don't have the enrichment of the basic level data and the level of completeness that we need to train the AI, it's not going to understand which of that data is green, which of that data is brown, and how can we go about highlighting the green data to generate more focus and savings on things like ESG initiatives. It is a very hot topic and a future state of the goal, but I find that most companies in that journey process, their data is not to the level of transformed, cleansed state, if I could say that, to where we need to be able to understand those type of aspects. But that's where a lot of third-party companies are coming in. You see EcoVadis, you see Tealbook, you see Xeeva, many other companies starting to run these scorecarding capabilities to start to collect that green data, not only from your historical spend data, your transactional data with your suppliers, but what can we pull from the marketplace? What can we use to enhance it? And what can your suppliers tell us from their scorecard? Do they have environmental impact plans in place? Do they have sustainability plans in place? If we aren't collecting that information and scoring our suppliers appropriately, we're missing some of that green data to be intelligent about how and where we're working and spending our money to be able to be more impactful on those areas.
Thank you so much. I have one more question on the screen. That is green procurement affordable?
Uh, in certain areas. I mean, I think as we look at this, and this has been a topic, I think this is my 8th conference I've spoken at this year. And between risk and ESG and what we can do to be more green are very, very hot topics. Data transformation is a very hot topic. I think businesses are investing into this appropriately. Could it be more? Yes. Should it be more? Probably. But at the end of the day, we are corporations, and in most cases, for-profit corporations, where the balance of a business case still needs to take place. It's our job as procurement professionals to start to uncover that business case on where we can drive more green initiatives that truly make sense to the company. So is it a higher cost? I would say in some areas, yeah, but what is that cost, or what is the cost avoidance you're achieving by taking these paths within your data and taking these paths as the companies start to invest more into sustainability, green data, green procurement, and so on. So it is a business case that you're still going to have to run and find where that value is. But I think a lot of creative thinkers in the market have found unique ways to really drive value and push into the green initiatives.
Thank you. It looks like we have covered all main questions. Mr. Hill, Mr. Padmanabhan, is there anything else you wanted to cover before we take a short break?
No, I think we are all good here. Was there a last question over here? I see it.
Oh, yeah, there is one. Sorry, I missed that. Today, the major challenge is clean data. Over the years, data has accumulated, but not available. What is the various technological tool to make the procurement green?
So, it's a very valid point in the current. This question is actually talking about the pain the professional is currently facing. So, the data, over the years, as in certain industries, it gets created, not only due to mergers and acquisitions, you're probably migrating from a X ERP to a Y ERP, but the data nobody really cares about. So, what I could understand is that data itself is huge, but it's not clean. There are duplicates. The description is not at all there. You don't have any classification. And also, when we talk about certain important things on sustainability and all that, how we are looking at the industry parameters of UNSPSC and NICS. Now, these things, how, as this question talks about, what are the various tech tools. Now, what we at Xeeva we have been able to do is the data transformation, which I spoke and what Chad was also speaking about, is how we can correct the data, means how we can address the issue at the root, how we can put standardization, how we can have the machine learning coming into the picture, auto classifying the data, and not only giving a categorization side to it, but recommending that what is the right step as to how we can standardize it, which is the right taxonomy for your industry. For example, I'm into automotive. Now, I would like to see how, let's say, an automotive taxonomy looks in UNSPSC. At the same time, let's say if I'm a category manager in food and beverages industry, I would like to see how probably a UNSPSC sees my data taxonomy. So both these stuff can be wrapped into a proper tool, which the way we have been able to do, and taking that unstructured data into a structured data so that it can get more meaningful procurement for the team, which eventually is going to make it more sustainable and from a green aspect also. This is the way which we have been able to do, and for all our existing and future customers, prospects also. Chad, anything you want to add on that?
No, I think well answered. I think we would love to show you more about Xeeva, what we can do, our philosophies on data and data transformation. We believe data transformation leads to a better digital transformation. So as we start to uncover these journeys, as you start to go through your current state and maturity assessments and where you want to be in your future state, we would love to be a part of that journey. Please connect with Anurag and I on LinkedIn, visit our website, our YouTube channel for more information. And if you would ever like to see a full product demo or to discuss with us more, please reach out and we'd be happy to engage. But thank you very, very much for the time.
Thank you, Payal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's now break for 15 minutes and be back by 12 India, by, p.m. Indian Standard Time.